Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm just going to go right to the disclosures. One time I spoke at a Medtronic event, and one time I tested a Medtronic device. But my biggest disclosure is, he kind of tried to tell you why I'm giving this talk, but I do not feel that I am really super successful at what he's talking about, but I will share gladly whatever little tricks and tips that I'm aware of, and maybe it will be helpful to you. So when I think about an academic career, these are kind of the buckets of things that I think about that we're all involved in. Obviously, most of us at least, are clinical surgeons, so we're seeing patients, and maybe that includes clinical research, but doing clinical work. That's obviously a huge part of what we do. But in addition to that, there's the academic activity. So there's the teaching, the writing, the research, all of that. Then there's things like this, the professional organizations that we're a part of, and the work that we do as part of those organizations, and the contributions that we make to meetings. And editorial activity, right? So whether we're editing or being an editor for a journal, associate editor, editor-in-chief, just reviewing from time to time. And then advocacy. So I don't know that everyone else who might have given this talk would have included advocacy, but to me that's a big part of what we do, and it's a responsibility that I think we really do have as physicians and surgeons. So I'm going to talk more about all of those. But before that, I think part of the finding your niche is figuring out what it is that you want to do, which involves a lot of thinking and soul searching and taking inventory of what things you're good at, what things you enjoy, what things you're not good at, what things you don't enjoy. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of what that was like for me, because I'm only me, so I really intimately am aware of my process, and that's all I can really share with you guys today. So when I was an undergrad, I was in engineering. I did biomedical engineering. I loved math. My favorite topic in school all through my career, up until even through the end of college. And as I was there doing engineering, I had this do I really want to be an engineer the rest of my life? I mean, I like the math, I like the science, it's all good, but I don't know if that's my thing. And then I decided to go to medical school. I felt like it married my interest in science and wanting to work with people. And then when I was in medical school, I thought, is this really what medical school is? And I thought maybe I should go to law school. So I took the LSAT in my second year of medical school, and I talked to a couple of people who had MD-JDs, and I was like, maybe I should do that? I don't know. So what I decided to do was go to my clinical years. Everybody says, when you work with patients, that's the best part of medical school. So I said, okay, fine. I'm going to go to my third year, and then I'll make a decision. So then I did not go to law school. I ended up really liking surgery, and I said, okay, fine, I can do surgery. Then, we all have to do, at a lot of academic centers, research. And I also will tell you, I found surgery residency not to be what I had anticipated it to be. It was a lot less sleep and a lot more stress. And so I said, well, I'm going to go try to learn about how we could do this differently. So I enrolled in a PhD program at a school of education, thinking that I would study assessment and curriculum design and figure out a better way to train surgeons. Then in the middle of that, I thought, well, maybe there are other things I could do with my life. So I applied for strategy consulting jobs, and I did that. I did a summer internship at one of the top 3 strategy consulting firms. And that was an experience I'm happy to share with anyone who has interest in that. And I actually really enjoyed what I did. But at the end of that, I thought, maybe I'm okay with surgery. So I went back. And here I am now practicing as a surgeon. But I put this big question mark here because I think for many people, and certainly for me, it's not still clear to me what my future holds. Will I continue to be a clinical surgeon? How much of my time will I spend clinical? Will I do more advocacy work? Will I stop practicing clinical medicine? I have no idea. As you can see, I think a lot about options and opportunities, and that's not going to stop just because I have a job now that's like a fully independent job. So who knows what will come for me. But I just wanted to share that journey because it does seem from the outside like what Dr. Stephanie was saying, oh, look, you're doing great. And some things are great, but still a lot of uncertainty, and I think that's normal. So In terms of the academic stuff, the editorial stuff, and so on, I wanted to share a little bit about what has happened for me in developing my profile and becoming known for the things that I do. So first is what's my clinical specialty, right? And that's going to drive some of my academic endeavors, including the editorial activities and the societies. So for me, my main clinical interest is bariatric surgery. So you see that series of societies on the top right that I'm involved in. Those are all, in my mind, related to my work as a bariatric surgeon. And then on the bottom right, you see the journals that I review for that, in my mind, are most tied to my clinical practice. And those are all going to be different for everyone, depending on what all people in this room might be interested in. But my main point was to say it's not one thing, and it doesn't have to be this many things either. But if you think about whatever your clinical interest is, what are the societies and the journals that align with that, and make that interest known, then it's not at all difficult to become involved in these organizations and these journals. It is wonderful if you can marry your clinical work with your research interest or your academic interest. And I have that a little bit, but really my main academic interest is in diversity and inclusion in education, mostly related to my PhD work. So then I have a whole host of other societies that are associated with that interest, as well as a whole host of other journals that I review for that are related to that interest. And that all sounds fine, but then this is what I end up doing, which is why I say it's really nice if you can actually have those things be really nicely aligned. Because otherwise, you know, there are maybe some journal editors out there. This is part of why sometimes people don't get those reviews back to you in time, because we're reviewing for 7 or 8 journals, and it's quite a lot to do. And again, you don't have to do this much. I have I'm kind of a glutton for things. I just like to do things. And so people are like, oh, do you want to do this review? Oh, sure, I will do that review. Do you want to join the society? Oh, sure, I'd be happy to help out with that. And so then I just I'm hoarding all these things as they come toward me. I'm sorry. And at some point, it's good to learn how to say no and when to say no, but they're all good things. It's like shiny objects, right? There's just so many shiny objects, and I want them all. But anyway, so that might be different for some people out in the audience. Then the next piece is advocacy. And the reason I display it like this on here is that both your clinical interest and your research interest, or whatever your other academic interest is, probably align with some kind of advocacy behavior. And that's not ever, I think in most medical schools, or at least when I went to medical school, that wasn't really taught to me, and it's something I'm still learning about and navigating. But advocacy can be a lot of different things, so it's not any one thing. You can write blogs about things that matter to you. For example, one of the things that I'm interested in is weight bias. So I've written about that, and I've given talks about that. Social media is a way to say that you know what you do or don't believe in. I was actually just sharing with a friend, there's a woman on Twitter who's a gynecologist who has fought Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow's company, quite a lot, because they've been putting a lot of misinformation out in the world, and she just goes on Twitter and she says, nope, you are wrong, stop lying to the people. And so that is a form of advocacy. Chats, there are chats online, both on Twitter and on Facebook, where you can share high quality information that patients don't always have access to unless they're actually in a physician's office. So that's another way to put information out in the world. Lobbying, of course, for bariatrics, that's a big part of what we do too, trying to improve access to care. And then publishing, and publishing is all sorts of different things. Even blogs you could put under publishing, but it's also publishing things like op-eds in major newspapers like New York Times or Washington Post, or even your local papers in whatever city you live in. Or it can be obviously the work that we're all very familiar with, which is writing academic papers about research, but also remember that there are perspectives and commentaries in almost every one of our academic journals where you can still do the same type of writing, where you can make an argument. So you're not, research findings are somewhat neutral-ish, but you can actually go and make an argument about why you think something should be this way or not be this way, or should be done this way or not be done this way. And you can do that in our medical journals if you choose to do that. So what I think about kind of overall, aside from those categories, is that there is work that I do that is the clinical work and that is the research work. Like you see there, the surgery itself, the mentorship to students and residents, the teaching that happens. And then there's how you tell the world about that stuff. Because it's great to do all of that stuff, but I guess it depends a little bit on your aspirations, but if your aspiration is to build your network and to become known for what it is that you do and to maybe become a leader in an organization or two or even locally at your hospital, then it's important for people to know what you do. Sometimes people, and women mostly are guilty of this, think that if we just do really good work, people will notice. But why make it hard for people? Just share the work that you're doing in a non-obnoxious way, and then people will know. And then when they need someone who's going to talk on the topic that you're an expert on, they'll be, oh, I know this person does this work because I saw this paper the person wrote or these tweets that the person wrote or whatever it is. And so that dissemination can be writing like we were talking about in academic journals. It can be writing for lay press. It can be putting your own website up and having your own blog that you write about whatever you're passionate on. It can be speaking, and it can be speaking at things like this, or it can be speaking in a grand round setting, or it can be speaking at conferences that are maybe specific to your discipline even more than this. Like if you're a hepatobiliary surgeon in this room, there might be hepatobiliary conferences that you go and speak at. And then media, which to me again includes social media, which is why I put the Twitter icon, but also all forms of media. You can go on your local TV and talk about whatever it is that you're passionate about, whether it's pancreatic cancer or bariatric surgery, and talk about what the major issues are. When there's a big study that comes out, you can write about that for the public. It doesn't have to just be within the journals that like no one really can access aside from those of us who are already here. And that's kind of basically my entire idea of how you find your niche and expand your network. So I'll be up here for the panel. Thank you.